And now, from the Sophos News Network and the team that brought you Break a Hacker's Heart, comes the Adapting to the New Environment edition, with all the latest cyber news that's legal to say out loud.
Welcome back. It's great to be here. Welcome to this episode of Break a Hacker's Heart Newsroom. I'm Ben Visharan, your host, and you're not. And with me is Aaron Bugle.
I can smell you from here, Benny. Is that Axe body spray? Nice one, mate. Well, other than that, it's fantastic to be back, and I'm super excited about the content we have coming out.
Absolutely, Aaron. However, there's been quite a few nervous days and weeks for those that are tasked with securing their business from pesky cyber criminals.
Pesky is hardly the word for it, Ben, because since our last broadcast, things have really gotten out of control. There's been week after week of hearing about yet another full-scale breach of a corporate or customer data from large and well-known companies.
And that's why we want to focus on the need to adapt the new security environment. Not so much working from home because of COVID, but rather the landscape that cyber criminals have terraformed and are now dragging victims through.
Terraforming sounds like terror.
It is terrifying. We're seeing a big shift in the way a criminal gang approaches a breached organisation. Typically, the ransomware operators have subcontracted a group of breach specialists to gain remote access into a desired target business. Once they have that initial foothold, they'll really place their own hands on keyboard and work to a path of maximum impact.
For an agreed price, access is handed over to the ransomware operators just like that.
That's right, and the breach specialists will have a catalogue of organisations they've already breached. Lists of breach victims that are simply waiting to remotely be accessed with whatever intent the criminal gang desires. A scary thought.
And the victim organisation only learns of all of this when the ransomware pops up on their Monday morning login.
Organisations need to be better capable of monitoring their own environment. A case in point, if you need to expose remote access to the internet with the assumption that it's done securely, you don't need to turn your back on it. You need to monitor it.
Exactly, but let's loop back to this train of thought as our foreign correspondent, Chet Wisniewski, has a great bit of insight into the difficulty of getting monitoring just right.
Thanks, Aaron. I wouldn't be here right now if the paper mill we were logging for hadn't had to abruptly stop operations due to a ransomware event today. The thing is, you can't actually operate the rest of the mill or logging operations without instructions from the IT network. Would you believe these beaver brains had an outward-facing remote desktop server they weren't even aware of? The criminals walked right in, stole their data, and shut them down colder than an ice hockey rink in February. Time and again, we see organizations with pretty good security get caught out by unprotected assets, shadow IT, or exceptions to policies no one ever bothered to circle back to. We must take stock of everything we have, assess the risk, watch for breach, remediate, and repeat the cycle again. It's sort of like when you tie a moose to a flagpole. You just keep going round and round and round. That's it for me. Back to you, Aaron.
Thanks very much for that report, Chet.
I always find it fascinating when I hear Chet describe the process criminals go through to take advantage of those that are not prepared. It just makes sense and therefore easy to defend against.
It puts it into perspective for those of us who have been lucky enough to not be a victim of cybercrime.
I don't think it's luck, Aaron. It's just hard work and vigilance by the defenders of those organisations who make their environment secure against being breached.
But does that also extend to the situation where those who have been breached and had data stolen had failings on all levels? I mean, who leaves data just lying around to be picked up? Hello, encryption people, don't you encrypt at rest?
Back to our thoughts before on monitoring. Most of us who have spent a great deal of time building walls and controls to keep criminals out, in some cases, don't spend the same effort on ensuring the hygiene of our internal environments. I mean, how easy would it be to find sensitive data on your network if you simply look around? Are there permissions in place? Is sensitive data segregated? Do you log data movement? And yes, encryption when it's at rest. These are all blended controls that can be used to keep data from being instantly accessible to anyone, given their simple presence on your network.
That's a great thought to introduce our next segment on monitoring at the network level. Check it out.
Thanks, Ben. There's no doubt the cloud has some great benefits, but not without some challenges. Public cloud providers like AWS, Azure, and Google, offer customers a great deal of flexibility in how they build their cloud environments. This allows customers the opportunity to innovate in ways that aren't possible or cost-effective on-premise. But as a consequence of all this flexibility, the public cloud providers cannot completely protect a customer's network, virtual machines, or the data that exists in the cloud. Instead, they operate what's known as a shared responsibility security model. The cloud providers ensure security of the cloud, while customers are responsible for anything they place in the cloud. So, issues like physical protection at the data center, virtual separation at the customer's data and environments, that's all taken care of by the public cloud provider. However, anything an organisation puts in the cloud, that's the customer's responsibility. Some of the toughest challenges to getting cloud security posture right is having adequate visibility of all of their infrastructure, workloads, and data. Typically, we find that organisations struggle with the visibility of what's going on in their cloud. And naturally, what they can't see gets ignored, and therefore they fail to identify priorities around what data and infrastructure to secure. In the end, security is everyone's business, and responsibility cannot be outsourced, no matter how much we want it to be. Back to you in the studio.
Fascinating, eh, Ben?
I concur, Aaron.
Speaking of concurring, let's introduce an industry term in a connotation that'll see unprepared watchers of this show blow their drinks out of their noses. Horizontally scaled cyber attacks. What it means is this: cyber criminals abusing managed service providers, MSPs, as a way to scale up their cyber attacks to multiple victims at once. It's like using one of the benefits of cloud computing, elasticity and scalability, but for evil instead of good.
Isn't that just the internet?
True, there are good parts of the internet, cat videos,
People falling over, stunts going wrong.
but in regards to the MSPs out there, come on. Make sure you're managing and monitoring your own operations as well as your users on your own network.
Succinctly said, and you're right, MSPs and their natural transition at becoming managed security service providers makes them an even juicier target for cybercriminals. The lure of a poorly secured mass management platform with a whole bunch of customers hanging off it is the clearest example of the lowest hanging fruit that I can think of since my fruit picking days as a student.
Is that really on your CV, Ben? Fruit picking?
And to put this into content, we've got our weatherman ready and waiting to take us through an example of MSSPs gone bad. Here's Paul Ducklin to take us through his own thoughts about MSPs being used as a launchpad for badness. Over to you, Duck.
Thank you, Ben. Here's a story that Sophos Rapid Response told me about an attack where the crooks didn't realise or even apparently care in advance that they were breaking into an MSP, but when their reconnaissance crew, the team that maps out the network better than you know it yourself perhaps, well, they came across an admin console in their travels, and when they investigated, they realised that it gave them access not only to the company's own computers, but also to all of their customers. Very, very convenient, very, very insecure. And that's a little bit like, an old school burglar breaks into a property, finds a key that looks like a safe key, goes from room to room trying to find the safe. And when he does find the safe, lo and behold, it's not a safe, it's a wall full of safe deposit boxes belonging to dozens of different people, all opened up with the same key. So if you are a managed service provider, don't do that. Defensive depth, divide and conquer, need to know, two-factor authentication. All these things make your life a little bit less convenient, but they make things much, much harder for the crooks. And with that, back to the studio.
Thanks very much for that report, Chet. But it's time, ladies and gentlemen, and other non-binary entities, for my favourite segment, the Deep Dive. I think it's as plain as the nose on my face that after a major cyber event, we take a moment of pause to ask, could this happen to me? But if this is the one and only time you're considering risk, then you're not doing it right. As my old basketball coach, Michael Mighty McDonald said, if you fail to prepare, you're planning for failure.
Wasn't that Dwayne Johnson from Fast and Furious 5, 6, 7.
Well, I forgot who said it, but you know it's true in your loins, Ben.
Loins? I have loins?
To me, it mirrors the inaction we see on a daily basis from those who are people who are responsible for incident response. My message to them is, plan for failure, people. Even in the cloud, we see many of the operators who provide infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, software as a service, desktop as a service, plan for a device to break every minute. And as such, they build resiliency. Those of us who are responsible for IT security, right up through owning and operating a business, need to prepare for failure. On the most basic level, IT people should sit around a table just like you're playing a game of Monopoly with your family.
Could it be Cluedo? I like Cluedo.
It can be whatever you want. It could be even Guess Who or Mousetrap. The point is to gather together and brainstorm some possible security events. What could possibly happen to threaten your network, your operations, and your data? Then work out your response. Who to call, who to tell, what to do, and how to recover. It's only by intimately knowing how and what to do in an emergency that when an actual emergency strikes, you can respond with a plan.
I think what you're talking about is called wargaming, isn't it?
Yep, but some of us are more into peace, man. Whatever you want to call it, going through a range of cyber threats, working out an incident response plan, and most importantly, rehearsing that plan with all of the key players is a great way to test your ability to cope with a real security incident.
Well, what do you know? We're out of time. Thank you so much to our correspondents today, and we hope you've enjoyed our Adapting to the New Environment edition.
If you have any queries about issues raised today, contact Sophos to find out how we can help.
So that's all from me in the Sophos newsroom.
And that's it from me. Thanks to the team. For more information or to follow up on our stories, head on over to sophos.com. We'll see you next time in the newsroom. Stay secure.
You flash the peace sign? What are you, some kind of hippie?
Says the organic fruit picker.